appreciate you joining. Hello to everyone that's joining, and hello to everyone that's going to watch the video, the recording later, which I'll obviously send across to you guys at Polar Squad as well, to distribute to your networks. I'll go to introductions in just a moment, but for anyone that doesn't know, we're joined today by Yaya Zioni, Vitek Urbanek, and Jaakko Polari, all from Polar Squad, from Germany and the Scandinavian market. Polar Squad, in terms of what I know about them, they focus on process and automation in the world that lies between development and release. So the self-proclaimed best DevOps company, which I'm sure they'll go into more details about in a moment. But that's enough for me, because I'm sure you'll do it more justice. So I'll hand over to you three to give introductions to people watching.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jaakko Polari. I'm the lead SRE consultant here at Polar Squad. So basically what I do is I do consultancy projects, assist with some of the sales processes internally here at Polar Squad, based in Helsinki, Finland, and yeah, working closely with Jair and Vitek.
Jair?
Okay, I'm Yaya Zioni. I'm leading the Berlin branch of Polar Squad. I'm doing everything right now, less and less hands-on, more and more sales and strategy and partnership and high-level consultancy of culture side of things. Yeah, working a lot with both Vitek and Jaakko.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Hey, hello. My name's Vitek Kubernetes. I'm working in, I live in Finland and working for the Finland branch of Polar Squad as an SRE consultant. I joined quite recently, and the main focus would be building observability and reliability mindset within developer and operations teams, and also a lot of fiddling with hands-on with technology as well. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Vitek, I'll come to you first, because fairly new at Polar Squad, like you said. So as a Kubernetes partner company, obviously it speaks for itself, but is Kubernetes something that has always been a part of your experience, or are you more sort of agnostic in your background?
I am actually quite new to Kubernetes. I've been using Kubernetes for just past 2 years, and so I think I'm now at a stage when I know a thing or two about the platform. But since I've been in the business for like 10 years, so obviously I've worked with lots of different tools and different platforms. So I kind of pride myself to pick the right tool for the job. And although like the last 2 years with working with Kubernetes it's been amazing, and it's quite an exciting tool to work with.
You talked a minute ago about building the mindset amongst employees and colleagues. Does your role involve consulting as well as kind of hands-on technical engineering? Yeah.
I've done a lot of, before I joined Polar Squad, I've also done a lot of freelance consulting, especially in site reliability engineering or reliability engineering in general, right? So working with customers on how they handle incidents, what are their processes around their infrastructure and operations. And that's when the Kubernetes came into discussion quite a lot, because when adopting the DevOps mindset and basically saying the developers build it, the developers run it, Kubernetes make that quite possible. Not easy, but I would say quite very possible.
Yeah. Okay. Jaakko, I'll come to you because Vitek said something quite interesting in terms of priding himself on knowing when it's the right time to pick the right tool for the right job. So I know you've worked on numerous projects where Kubernetes was present. So when it comes to consulting with your customers, when do you know it's right to implement Kubernetes over the numerous other things out there that can do the same job or similar job?
Yeah, so I've been using Kubernetes for a couple of years now, and the cases where I've found it to be really useful at is at times when you want to have like a consolidated platform for your developers to work on, like where they can themselves run their own microservices, so they can take care of not just the deployment but also the maintenance of their own services. Because what Kubernetes I found to do really well is make a lot of that stuff really easy. And since it's getting a lot of like traction in the field as well, it's more likely that you run into people that have done it before as well. So if you hire them, you can transfer that knowledge quite easily. Whereas in the past, it has been sort of like a bit of a mishmash of you have to kind of like figure it out yourself type of things. And this is where I think Kubernetes shines really, really well. Another use case that I found it to be really useful is as a sort of like a generic compute platform. So just exposing a bunch of your hardware, and if you don't really care too much about like where exactly you run your stuff, but you just want to run your container somewhere, and that has the appropriate amount of resources. So that's something where I found Kubernetes to be really good at as well.
Nice one. Okay. Yeah, I'll come to you next because something I wanted to ask you for a while. Polar Squad is obviously a partner company, CNCF and Kubernetes. What does that mean?
So this it means that we're part of the Linux Foundation, and it means that it opens for us the opportunity to become what is named Kubernetes certified service provider. So it means that in our company there is enough knowledge and experience in Kubernetes in a way that enough people did the certificates, but it also makes you part of the whole community thing. So for example, stuff that came to me is that I volunteered to be part of Helm Summit EU. So I was part of the program. Not always we have the ability to help the community as we would like, but definitely it puts us in a place where it's more easy and we want to do it more. So we have liaison people that are building more communication with the CNCF, and the community of the CNCF, I think, is the strongest part. So it's nice to be part of that in a way.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that before. The whole community side of things is quite important. Okay, and Polar Squad is a company founded and started in the Scandinavian market, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're obviously over in Germany, and if I'm not mistaken, you're the first employee in Germany of Polar Squad.
I am.
Okay, so I mean, building a team over in Germany, I guess, is part of your remit. What is it you look for? Is it the Kubernetes certificates? Is it commercial experience?
No, I mean, if you have a certificate, definitely you start in a better place. But at the end, I do believe that technological knowledge is something people can earn. What I am looking for when I interview people is a certain mindset. And that mindset, of course, is based on knowledge, because we do need people that have knowledge right now. But for me, it's also important to have, it doesn't need to fit what I think about Kubernetes. It can be even the opposite. But I want to hear some reasoning behind the idea. So I want to hear some meta ideas about Kubernetes. And that's the notion I want to understand, that maybe I don't care if you know how to do kubeconfig something or what kind of YAML. I'm going to show you YAML and you show me the error. But I do want you to understand why this tool became such a big game changer and such a big known instrument in our world. And even if you tell me that it's a really good marketing scam or marketing plan would be a better from the CNCF itself, because they are really good at marketing, I would say there is also something there. But I want to see how your knowledge about distributed systems and some outside of the box thinking or inside of the box thinking, but with some sort of this analytical thinking. So that's what I'm looking for.
So would that be fair to say that a kind of culture at Polish Squad where people can challenge an idea and bring their own ideas to the table?
Yeah, for example, I started, one of the things that when I started is that I got really pushed to start talking about things, to go to convention. So it was really from the early start, people pushed me to do that because I have history of writing in magazines and stuff. And I think it came really easy for me suddenly. Like I'm a bit shy guy, but I have things to say. So my first talk is something that I thought about when I was in hospital because I had stone in the kidney, and I called it "When Will DevOps Die?" So I would imagine that the first thing when I introduce this talk on our Fridays where we all meet would be that everybody would say, "Shut up! You're talking bad about our business," but actually everybody was saying it's amazing, please fix this, please fix that. And after everybody came like, hey, you need to read this book, hey, we also think about that, hey, that's exactly the kind of thinking we want to have here in this company. And then I said, okay, I'm happy. So this is the atmosphere we try to achieve. It doesn't mean that it happens all the time, but it's very much like challenging and open. And I try to accept every, like, I sound very opinionated. The thing is that I'm only sounding very opinionated. So I really like listening to people and trying to learn from them.
Nice, okay. So to link into what you were saying a moment then in terms of, game changing, making it game changing, what does it bring to the table that's game changing in terms of Kubernetes? What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, I can start. I think for me, it's sort of like the platform for other to build platforms on it. So I think it's a stage, like it's going to change very soon. But for now, the ability to abstract so many layers of hardware make it a really interesting tool, because it brings this automation to operators. I mean, Vitek, I don't know if Jaco is that veteran, but Vitek would agree with me that all this, you no longer need to wake up sometimes and see that your production is down because pods are up and down all the time because it will be restarted. So it's a good step forward. And because you got like so many layers of abstraction, it makes a lot of things much more easy, but the learning curve is very, very, very slow. So it takes a lot of time to actually know it, but it brings this kind of a tooling that is fitting the cloud world. It's sort of like when Linux arrived to servers and it changed everything and became pushed away Unix. I think this is sort of like operating system for the cloud to control the back end of the cloud. So that's my take on it.
Jaco, same question?
Yeah, I think what really made it fit great is that it pulled in a lot of like people from different places, from Google and other big companies and the community, to sort of like pool all of this sysadmin operations knowledge to basically make a product to fix all of those things, or a lot of those things. And it's sort of like building on that idea of like, how do we make this approachable? How do we make this easy to achieve? And I think the way that these things are being taught out is I think that's something is maybe not like unique to Kubernetes perhaps, but it's something that is definitely like taken to a degree where there's not many other ones that are doing it the same way. So the idea is like the infrastructure as data, where you publish what you want to have in your cluster, and the cluster then just takes care of always satisfying that demand the best it can. that's something that is rarely seen at the moment in other places. And I think that's something that is most likely going to become, that idea itself is going to become more popular outside of Kubernetes as well.
So Kubernetes is kind of going to set the way for other tools to follow.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, just the fact that it's sort of like, yeah, we've had container orchestration platforms before, but I think Kubernetes comes with a lot of batteries included, and also the extension points where you can also include your stuff into it as well, which I think has made it quite popular. So you get service discovery basically for free. You get zero downtime deployments for free, all that sort of stuff what you generally have to figure out yourself. And there's like mishmash of tools that you then have to piece together.
I think the fact that it's open source as well and allows so many different kind of contributions and so many different opinions and things to add into it is obviously a big bonus as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also the fact that it's not tied to a single vendor. It's supported by the foundation itself, which of course pulls in multiple vendors, but they're all collaborating together rather than just one vendor dictating the path forward.
Okay. And Vitek, in your opinion, what does it bring to the table that's so game changing?
It's, for me, it's simple. It's developers understand it, right? Usually, if you have traditional infrastructure, you need some middleman between the developer or between the app or app development team and the infrastructure that will be able to handle the provisioning and decommissioning of the resources. That's how the traditional teams operate. With Kubernetes, or basically pretty much any container orchestration platform, you can give the responsibility to developers and say, hey, are you able to manage that? It's an API. And they're like, yeah, hell yeah, I can do that because I understand API. So it's the simplicity. I think the marketing helped behind that. And as has been mentioned, that CNCF is powerful and has powerful logos and has cool stickers. And people are motivated to develop extensions, and they're like private projects based on Kubernetes, which leads to duplication. Like there are plenty of tools that are doing the same thing, but I think mainly it's built for developers. It's sort of phasing out the need of having a dedicated operations person, because the devs are very, very capable. Or what I can see, like when I'm working with my current customer, the developers are taking care of their deployments, and like it comes naturally to them. And on contrary, if you like, or on the other side, if you look at the traditional operations specialists, I know a lot of people that have been like Linux admins and so on. They have a difficulty to grasp Kubernetes because it's so oriented on application, because it's so oriented on developers. So yeah, I think the game-changing bit is definitely in the simplicity in how it's built directly for the use of a developer.
So it kind of gives you a sense of ownership of the entire process then, rather than just giving you control over one part or another part.
Absolutely, yeah. You can actually be reasonable and ask the developers, hey, take care of the operations yourself, because everything is API driven.
Yeah,
simple as that.
Okay. All right. So I'll stick with you, Vitek, as you're on my screen for the next question. So we've spoken about why it's so game changing, but what are some of the aspects of Kubernetes that can be improved, do you think?
Well, since my juniority in Kubernetes, it's I think logging is one of the things, the observability bits and how Kubernetes does logging. I don't think that's necessarily that needs to improve. Maybe I just need to learn more about it, because that's something I've found a bit cumbersome when I'm trying to, like, I don't have a problem with getting the logs from the containers and the deployments themselves, but the internals of Kubernetes, basically how the logs for scaling and such, it's been a bit of a hassle for me to get. But that's not necessarily something that needs to improve. That is just something I need to properly learn. So I don't think I'm the good target for this, but perhaps like Jaakko would be a good guy to ask.
Okay, into the firing line, Jaakko.
All right. So kind of like continuing from what Vitek said about how it's easy for developers to use Kubernetes, and I think that's certainly true. What on the other hand, I think like it brings quite a bit of operational complexity. Like maybe setting up your own Kubernetes cluster, you can sort of get it done within a day if you're just learning it. It's not perhaps not that hard to set it up, but what really makes it difficult is to then understand what are the sort of like operations needs that you need to take care of, and that can be really time consuming. And also, I think that kind of like you see that in the major cloud providers, how they are currently when they are providing their own managed Kubernetes services, like Amazon's EKS or Google's GKE. They're still kind of rushed in a way. Like they want to provide that service, obviously, because Kubernetes is so popular, but there's still a lot of ways to go to make it proper. Basically, there's still a lot of stuff where you want to make a change in your cluster and it basically requires a full rebuild of the cluster. The versions lag behind, all that sort of stuff. So they also see the issue of maintaining it. And as a related note as well, the security and multi-tenancy in Kubernetes is kind of an afterthought. So like if you want to split your Kubernetes cluster into segregated parts where you have multiple teams working on and not having the ability to touch each other's stuff, I think that's something that is not really realized just yet. It's still in the sort of like experimental phase, and it's really important because a lot of organizations, they don't want to run like per team clusters. They want to run as little clusters as possible because of the overhead in operations. So they want to have like a handful of clusters, like one for testing, one for staging, one for production, and so on and so forth, and then just share those clusters between teams. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing improvements on.
So overheads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, come to you. Same question. Some of the things that, in your opinion, can be improved.
Well, I think I agree with both of my colleagues here. For me, I think I don't know if it needs to be improved. I think what happens is the ecosystem that is built slowly around it, and the next generation of applications that will be wrappers around it. So I see it as something that will become later a bit more like AWS. So we will see more and more features, small features in it, but in a way it will lose some of its interest for everybody. It will become slowly just something that you take for granted. It's like, yeah, of course, we use X and we use Helm, or we use all these tools they come to cater for needs around the Kubernetes ecosystem. And if you ask again, why is it so big? I think, again, this community-based ecosystem, some of these tools will disappear, but some of these tools are really growing, like Helm, for example, that is catering for a specific need, that you need some sort of a way to stop using the same YAMLs or copy pasting YAMLs like ever, and you want a deployment tool like RPMs, but for Kubernetes. So, and you need templating tools. And for what Vitek said, you need better logs. So you will create slowly better logs. And again, I would believe better monitoring will arrive. And there's companies like Humanitech that they build some sort of Heroku over Kubernetes right now. So all these things, I think this is how it will improve slowly, the ecosystem around it. The Kubernetes, it will also improve, but I think the ecosystem is what will push it forward.
So it's interesting what you said about kind of going more towards an AWS type of service where there's more and more and more features continuously being added. It makes sense that some of the current features or some of the current benefits might get diluted because of that. It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And when there's a customer or a company that you're talking to, or even a company like Polar Squad looking to utilize the best of what Kubernetes has to offer at the moment, how would a company get the best use out of Kubernetes?
I can start with that.
Yeah.
So I've thought about like a couple of things. So one is, first of all, make sure you have the resources for like actually keeping it up to date. Because one thing that I've seen in many customer cases is they've set it up and forget it, and it goes really quick. It goes stale really quickly because of the update cycle. It's so fast. And another one is that don't just keep it as an ops thing. Like open it up for developers to use. Find out ways you can do that in a safe way, because it really is rich environment for developers to come up with their own solutions on.
That's quite interesting. So actually keep up to date with all of the numerous updates, because it will just quickly run away from you otherwise and become stale.
Yeah, precisely, because it's not really like enterprise tech where you buy a version of it and then you update it maybe once every 3 years. No, you have to update it like I think it's like every half a year or something like that, because the updated cycle is so that the 3 last versions are kept up to date, and I think it's like you get a new version out every 3 months or so. So you really need to keep track of it so you don't fall behind, and you also have to update update from like each version sequentially as well. You can't skip updates. So if you something that I've seen a few times is that you have like this really old cluster that's like version 1.6 or something like that, and we've already been on like the last sort of like supported version has been 1.12 or so there's like 12 versions to go forward. And it becomes a maintenance nightmare to get it upgraded, and you start to get into these incompatibilities, and security flaws are still abound. They are not fixed, and all that sort of stuff. So make sure you keep track of it.
It's like the operating system on the Mac.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Make sure that's up to date. All right, that's really interesting, actually. Thanks for that. Vitek, how does a company looking to utilize the best of Kubernetes get the most out of it?
I think that if the company is new to Kubernetes or is standing before making a decision whether to go for Kubernetes or not, is you need to qualify if you have the use case for it, right? That's what I would say. It is like an amazing tool for developers, as has been said, but it's also a tremendous rabbit hole that you can go down into and spend like infinite amount of time tuning and tweaking it and trying out new tools, because the community is very active. Tools are being made quite like with high frequency. So and also the learning curve is quite steep. So it's important to do some sort of a assessment of the situation and say, okay, I have the people that are willing to learn this. I can internally sell this to my developers. They are, because a lot of the operations shift will go to developers. So first, have a look if you can actually utilize and reap the benefits of it. And as Jaakko said, yes, I cannot stress enough the updates that needs to but that falls under the proper maintenance of it. Yeah. But like if you're in the situation and you're pondering, should I go Kubernetes or should I use, I don't know, virtual machines or instances rather than containers? First, look at your situation, look at your apps, look at your team. If you have team of, let's say, not old people, but like guys in slightly above my age, like I'm used to managing a Linux server and I don't want to learn anything else.
Yeah.
Then the right tool is like keep going, because the people need to also be happy with managing that. And some people are, for example, happy to learn new stuff like Kubernetes, but some people don't really want to go that way, don't want to go to because you need to become a bit of a developer when you're working with Kubernetes. Like there's no other way around it. So it's important to take look at your infrastructure, look at your people, look at your apps, and then decide. And we can help with that, actually. That's what Polar Squad does. We can help like the companies to look at, if you're standing in front of a tech refresh and you're considering, and doesn't have to be Kubernetes, we can actually help you get an independent and unbiased look at your infrastructure and your apps and your team, and say, yeah, Kubernetes is a good choice, or it is a bad choice. And it's always up to the company if they're going to listen to it, to that advice. But we're able to give that insight. So yes, in short, sorry for being very roundabout about the answer, but in short, if you want to get the best out of Kubernetes, you need to actually check if you're the good use case for it.
Do your proper research before just jumping in.
Precisely that.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, anything to add on that?
I totally agree with both of what Vitek and Jako said. Let me just add that there's also the business need. So when you check your product and when you check your infrastructure and if you check your people, you should also check what's your business goals and what do you want to achieve and how can Kubernetes help you there? Because for specific needs, Kubernetes won't change anything for you. If you're looking to build something that is with high volume and you think your teams are going to grow really fast and you want to do something very agile, very modern, yes, maybe Kubernetes can be your tool. But if you are looking for different things, it might be an overkill, a complete overkill. So it's also the question, what am I trying to achieve? What is my goal with this application? Because I think I don't believe in a subscription, kind of a prescription answer for each question. Like I know personally a story where Kubernetes became a sort of a business plan for a company that got closed because of that. So it can't be the answer. It needs to be the means to get to places, but the tech itself is not enough. That's what I'm saying. You need to understand why you want to use it. What's the benefit you're getting also from the business side? And here is where we're getting back to the whole DevOps thing. Then we want to get everybody working together and asking the right question at the right place is the thing that you want.
It's interesting. I guess what that leads me to think is that check about what Kubernetes can offer you. So rather than getting the whole package, check which parts of Kubernetes are going to benefit your business needs rather than just getting the whole lot.
Yeah, because yes, techies really like the new bling bling. Not always, as Vitek said, and I totally agree with that. But at the end of the day, the idea is to create a good product that can sell. And the question is, if your product is just running on some hardware in Herzner, or if your product is running on the coolest Kubernetes in Google Cloud, if it sells better or less. Of course, there's a lot of other variables in the middle, but making it really simple, that's a question you always should ask yourself. What's the benefit for business, for culture, for that? People tend to not think about those things sometimes, and then it beats them in the back a bit. It comes back at the end.
Yeah, okay. So sticking with you for a second, Inyoye, what would the alternatives be to Kubernetes?
Okay, it's endless array. Some people would say Nomad from HashiCorp, Fargate, ECS from AWS. It really just running your instances on EC2 or hardware at Herzner. There's hypervisors. There's a lot of other options. I think there's nothing that is one-to-one alternative, like you can say MySQL and Postgres or something like that. This is how I see it. I don't see any direct competition. There was Docker Swarm for a little bit, but it never got serious. So I think Docker Swarm is out. Some people talked about Mesos, but I think Mesos has a totally different use case, or a bit of a different use cases, but I never worked with Mesos, so I can't tell you. Yeah, that's my talk about my take on alternatives. So there's maybe Nomad from HashiCorp, but it's not even close to what Kubernetes can do. It's very simple. I would say maybe from each of the vendors of the cloud, maybe my esteemed colleagues here can fix me, but most of them has a container runtime, like ECS and I don't know GCP that well, but I guess they have something to run just containers, and maybe Lambdas and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Docker Swarm you mentioned, I mean, that was the one that, comes up quite a lot, but you're saying it's not really sort of taken off.
No, I think the whole, I mean, what Docker did was in a way brilliant. Like they took technologies that we already knew, like the old sysadmin from Unix and Linux. We knew containers. It wasn't new. At the beginning, when people talked to me about Docker, I said like, okay, a well-marketed container. Wow, we used to do LXD and LXC in the good times. But actually, when I stopped being stubborn and I checked it, I was surprised to see that it's so easy to use. And again, it's so developer-oriented. And suddenly, so I don't need to worry so much about everything now. The developers can ship the products whenever they want. So at that way, Docker did a really great job, but Docker Compose is also good. But I think the Swarm was not a big success. It was a half-baked kind of or at least it arrived in the wrong time and it lost to a really strong competition. Like,
yeah, that's a good summary actually. Jarkko, what are your thoughts on the alternatives?
Yeah, I could continue on that. Like I got the feeling from Docker Swarm that it's sort of like it's logical continuation from the Docker Compose world. So it kind of makes sense. Like if you've already like using that, then Swarm makes a lot of sense because it's very similar in structure and size. I think there's only like a couple of little differences, but like I've got no practical experience with it, but my understanding is that where it fails at a lot of times is that operations wise it wasn't so reliable as people would like it to be. So it's even more easier to use than Kubernetes, but like the technology that it promises it wasn't quite there yet. And I think once Docker the company itself started shipping Kubernetes out of the box as part of their own software distribution, then it's sort of like people started wondering like why would I even bother with Swarm at this point? Like
That kind of tells its own story.
Invested. Yeah. But on the other hand, like if you're already married to like a cloud provider like AWS and you're not looking for a hybrid cloud solution or a multi-cloud solution, I think it makes sense, like what Jari said, is to look into the solutions that the cloud provider provides, because a lot of times those can be operationally more simple, and they might just do the trick. Like they might just be enough for what you want. I've heard a lot of like success stories in using ECS, because even though it's not as featureful as Kubernetes, it can still do the job in many cases, and with maybe a little bit of hacks around it. But like you have to maintain less there. Like you have to spend less time in maintaining the control plane or the worker nodes, even if you use Fargate. And of course there's another option is to go like fully next step and try something with serverless, which is still kind of new, but I think there's really interesting stuff coming out of it. Maybe it's not a fit for everyone, but I think that's certainly something. I think that's even more developer friendly than Kubernetes is.
Okay, all right. And Vitek, you said that Kubernetes for you has been about what, sort of 2 years you've been working with Kubernetes, so I guess you might have some interesting thoughts on the alternatives that you've been using.
I haven't really used any other container orchestration platform in a serious environment. I mean, I've been messing around with Docker Swarm and Mesos and K3s. However, that's like that haven't never exited the lab environment. But I would definitely say that good alternative to look into is serverless, as Jaco mentioned, because the cloud providers are investing a lot of time into developing these offerings. So if you're in that situation as a company and deciding where to go next with your application infrastructure, I would definitely give a thought to serverless. Because if the logic is that you want to make your operations simpler, this is simpler, right? The Kubernetes or containers can simplify stuff, but it can also make like just building that platform can eat a lot of time, and you can fall down that rabbit hole. So the logic of the thing is like, look at serverless, look at, if you're the good case, if you're a good business case for serverless, means like if your performance expectations are in check, if your security expectations are in check with serverless. And it's also environment that is developing very fast. I'm personally running my like toy projects and or data analytics projects on Heroku, and it's so simple. It's all the gross operation stuff just goes out of a window. It's sort of like, when you're using managed Kubernetes, like all the gross stuff that you don't want to manage, you don't have to, right? The control plane and all that crap. So definitely look at serverless or look at the traditional infrastructure. Like there's nothing wrong with running VMs. There's nothing wrong with that. If it fits your operations model and you're happy with that and you're getting good results out of that, there is no reason to like jump on the bandwagon and drink the Kool-Aid and implement Kubernetes. It's always like you need to look at if business-wise you're doing well, because I've seen a lot of customers just going insane and like, oh, we need to move everything to public cloud because it's going to be cheaper, and it's all going to go onto containers because our current solution doesn't scale. But when you ask them to describe, what do you mean by that it doesn't scale, they have no idea. Like this the one dangerous thing behind all the strong marketing behind CNCF, that people just go insane. They're like, oh, I need to implement Kubernetes. You don't need to. Like if your application, if your business doesn't need to implement a new infrastructure solution, then you in fact don't need to implement Kubernetes. So alternatives, traditional infrastructure, and serverless, and even like bare metal solutions for running like good old KVM and running your own hypervisor. For example, my customer that I'm working with right now, they have a good use case for that, right? And there is no replacing of that solution inside. So nothing wrong with good old ways if they fit the job.
Yeah, goes back to what we were saying earlier. Just do your research properly before jumping in. So that actually leads me on to my next question quite nicely. Then I appreciate obviously certain things you can and can't talk about when we talk about customers, because it's your customer, you can't divulge information. But what feedback can you give us, Vitek, on recent experiences or projects specifically related to Kubernetes you've been working on?
Yeah, the feedback is that again, with looking at it with optics of a person that hasn't worked with that platform for too long, it's even like when I'm looking at the use cases where we're implementing Kubernetes at the customer, the feedback from my person and from the team around is, oh, it's amazing. Things fail much faster now, right? So, and it's a different paradigm of troubleshooting. If it's a different paradigm of things failing, so like boom, you shoot off your deployment, boom, it fails. Oh, it failed really nicely and really quick. If you imagine that on a compared traditional infrastructure, it would fail very slowly over couple of hours, maybe even days. So things fail really fast. That's really good feedback. The thing is that because I'm very oriented on result, I'm not very impressed with specific technologies, but I'm oriented on a result. I want to see the customer happier or the business going up or some manifestation of improvement. And so far, when migrating stuff onto Kubernetes, I haven't seen like that. Of course, developers are a bit happier. That's also achievement. But on the business side, the people are like, it works. It's all right. It's hitting the numbers that we're supposed to hit. But like, it's like no magic happening. The company isn't suddenly making like trillions of dollars. So I like the feedback that I'm getting on Kubernetes implementations from developers, from operations people. They're like, oh wow, it's a different world. But from the business side of things, which is important because we're not building like an infrastructure castle here. We are building something that will support companies' business. Business-wise, the feedback isn't that clear. And maybe we just need to wait for a bit to fully see the benefits. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's allowing that ownership that we spoke about earlier. Then that's the feedback you're getting. It's a good thing. Yeah. Yep. Nice. Okay. Jaakko, can you give us feedback on recent experiences of projects from your side?
Mm-hmm. So something that it's like pretty similar to experiences that Vitek has explained, which is like developers once they are maybe a little bit skeptical at first on like maybe I'm not really sure about this new thing. Is this another ops tool that they don't really want to understand? But once they get to try it, once they really get proper guidance into getting started with it, they immediately see the benefit and they immediately start they say, no, I don't want to go back to Ansible. I don't want to go back to my old tools. I want to keep on using more of this.
Yeah.
And they really, really like the fact that they can like quickly prototype new things. Just push a container image somewhere, one of their registries, and then from their own laptop fire up some pods on their testing cluster to see how things work out. It's like so easy compared to how it's been before, and that the fact that they can also replicate it easy on their own laptops with Minikube and other sort of like smaller scale clusters as well. So that's been a major improvement. That has led also to improvements in getting stuff more faster to production. Basically, the lead time to improvements getting faster there. So that has been seen as a business benefit, but otherwise, Kubernetes itself has not been on the minds of like business people, like Vitek said. What else? Yeah, the operational perspective has been something of a concern, but generally, like once there's enough scale, like once there's enough like teams onboarded on the Kubernetes, it's not generally been an issue.
Getting that initial buy-in then.
Yeah, most of it's just like getting the first migration done, trialing it out with some of the teams that then sort of like become almost like ambassadors for other teams to start getting them into that ecosystem.
Spreading the word.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Recent experiences, projects.
Okay, I'll try to give another perspective.
Yeah.
What I noticed is that the move, if you don't have the right people and you don't have the right mindset, it might be a bit hard to get there. But if you have a team that is a bit more modern and people, like Jaakko said, developers who can deploy by themselves, developers that are what I call the more recent brand of developers, that they know, like one time I talked to a developer and he told me, I don't care about where I run my software. So developers from that breed are disappearing slowly from the world. And I think if you have this kind of a team of developers who understand where they're running their software and they understand why they need to have responsibility, and the culture emphasizes that, then it's easy for them to get into the Kubernetes. And then they have, yes, of course, they make mistakes. They sometimes need help from people who are experts, but at the end of the day, they get something out of it, like better deployments or whatever they wanted to achieve. But when you come from a more, I would say, siloed kind of a company, and you don't have the knowledge, sometimes it's hard to get the best out of it. I could see people struggle with it, like definitely, like Vitek said, all Linux people who are expert in Linux, or developers who don't really want to take care and think about their platform that they run the software on, because they say, this is my code and now I chuck it over the fence, have fun. So for those kind of operation, it can be, from my experience, from what I saw, it can be a bit of a pain to get into the Kubernetes, and how to make everything you do fitting that, and also the DevOps culture. Those are really big questions that sometimes we try to help them tackle. Yeah, so that's from my side.
I think mindset seems to be a common theme throughout today's chat. I think having that right mindset from the start is quite imperative by the sounds of it. I think you've all mentioned it at one point or another.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, one final question for each of you guys, just to sort of wrap up today's session. Jaakko, I'll start with yourself as you're on my screen. What should you consider before jumping on the Kubernetes bandwagon?
Yeah, I think like sort of like continuing from what Jair said earlier, is that understand that Kubernetes is not the end goal. It's just a step for you to reach whatever you need to reach, and also make sure you do your homework before you get started with Kubernetes. Like really research it. Don't just jump into it because it's the popular new thing. Yeah. Otherwise, you will burn bridges quite fast.
Yeah. Yeah, you agree with that?
Yes, I think I totally agree. Like, just try to understand what you try to achieve and why are you trying to use that, and where you think it's going to take you. Like, yeah.
Vitek?
Yeah, research and understand what you're trying to achieve. That's it.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, that probably goes for a lot of things in business, right? So make sure you have a proper business case before you go and implement a new feature, before you hire someone, before you spend money on whatever. Make sure you've got a proper business case.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Guys, that's all the questions from me. If you've got just a couple of minutes spare, I will allow people to send me a question in the chat box in case there's anybody that has a question to ask. So I'll just give that a minute or two. So for anyone, just drop me a message and then I can read it out for you. Otherwise, we are done. So I'll just give that a minute or two. But just while I'm waiting for those questions to come through, thanks guys. I appreciate all your time today. It's been really good, actually. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you a lot. This was really good session.
I'll have the recording up before the end of the week and send it to you so you can put it out to your channels if you wish.
Awesome.
So no questions have come through as yet, but as always, just like in other talks, if there are questions afterwards and people think, they wanted to ask something, Vitek and Jaakko are all part of the DevOps group on Meetup, so drop a question in there and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer it.
And if you're interested in Polo Squad more, just go to polosquad.com, and there you can find more info about us and our services.
Absolutely. So no questions have come through, so we'll wrap it up there, which is bang on the hour mark. So perfect, actually. So I'll let all three of you go and get on with the rest of your day. And just thanks once again. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Joe.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
Joe.
Hey, guys.
Bye.
All the best. Bye.